Hello and welcome to the Mythology Manifest. I am very excited to be doing my first mythology video today. There is going to be a lot of names thrown around in this video, but I hope to give you an interesting and in-depth understanding of how the Greeks believed the world came to be. This is the creation story, and I hope you find it as fascinating as I do. It all started with chaos, an endless, noiseless void that we now call space. There were no days or night, no light nor darkness. Everything was simply chaos. That was until two beings emerged from chaos, the first two primordial deities. Now, primordial deities are creatures that embody something that transcends even the gods. The two that emerged from chaos were Nyx and Erebus, known to us as night and darkness. To the Greeks, each night, Nyx and Erebus would throw themselves over the earth to shroud it in darkness, thus allowing them to sleep. However, we're not quite there in our story just yet. From Nyx and Erebus came a whole new host of primordial deities. There was Aether and Hemera, light and day, who distanced themselves from their parents, viewing them as evil. There was Thanatos, who was death, and Charon, the ferryman of dead souls. There was Hypnos, who was sleep, and his son Morpheus, who embodied dreams. Their cousins were Phantasos, who became the deity of changing dreams, and his brother Phobetor, otherwise known to us as nightmares. There was Irene and Lyssa, peace and anger, as well as Oises, Moros, and Momos, to us known as misery, doom, and mockery. From Nyx and Erebus came all the fears of mortals. Geras, who was old age, Senectus, who was senility, Eris was the deity of strife, Aegea and Apate, who were known in English as laziness and deceit. There were also those not feared by mortals, but rather sought after, such as Tish, who was luck, Janus, who was choice, and the most sought after was Nike. No, not the shoes, the deity of victory. There were also the Moirae, who were incredibly interesting, the deities of fate. Now, there was three of those. Clotho, who spins the thread of life, Lachesis, who measures the thread, and Atropos, who cuts it with a golden shears, thus ending a mortal life. As you've heard, Nyx and Erebus had many children. They were like the rabbits of creation. But there are three more primordial deities, who are probably the most important of all the children of night and darkness. They are Gaia, Uranus, and Tartarus, the earth, the sky, and the eternal pit of the underworld. Gaia had children with both the sky and the pit. With Tartarus, she had the giants, who I will be discussing in a later video. Now, the earth deity was both Uranus' mother and his wife. Although this was not uncommon in Greek mythology, it doesn't make it not weird. But with Uranus, Gaia birthed Typhon and Echidna, who went on to conceive all monsters. They also had the Cyclops, monsters in their own right, with only one eye. Both loved these children. However, only Gaia loved their third set of children, the Hecatonkaias. These were monsters with 100 arms and 50 heads. Disgusted by them, Uranus sent them to Tartarus and kept them trapped down there, despite the pleas of Mother Earth. This was how Gaia's hatred of her husband began. She begged and begged Uranus to allow her children to come home, and when he refused, she began to plot her revenge. Whilst plotting her revenge, Gaia had more children with Uranus, many more children, who became known as the Titans. They embodied things such as celestial bodies, mental states, and the ocean. The Titans were Hyperion and Thea, who embodied sight and heavenly light. Their children were Eos, Helios, and Selene, to us known as the dawn, the sun, and the moon. Other Titans included Iapetus and Clymene, the Titans of mortality and fame. Together they had Atlas, Epimetheus, and Prometheus, three Titans I will be discussing in a separate video. Cos and Phoebe were also the children of Gaia and Uranus, and were the embodiment of intelligence and prophecy, and eventually together they had Leto and Asteria. There was also Themis, the Titan of law and order, and somehow she had kids on her own who were the Horae. The family tree extended further to Oceanus. Now, I think his name is quite self-explanatory. And Tethys, who was also the Titan of the ocean. The two of them conceived 6 daughters who became quite famous, known as the Oceanids. Unlike primordial deities, the Titans were physical beings who roamed the earth at all times, instead of remaining in and about the atmosphere and only coming down occasionally. So, with them being on the earth all the time, they divided up the land and the sea into different sections, north, east, south and west, and each Titan got their part. But of course, they had to have a ruler. This ended up being the Titan of time, Kronos, and his sister and wife, Rhea, the Titan of fertility. Now, Kronos was always viewed as the weakest of his brothers and sisters, and was always very bitter towards them, and was constantly trying to prove himself to his mother. So when Gaia came to him, crying rivers of tears, he promised he would do anything to end her suffering. She smiled at her son, and told him what Uranus had done to the Hecatonkaias years ago. She was finally hatching her plan. She told him how much them being banished had hurt her, and she continued to cry, making it rain. Kronos asked her what she would like him to do, and Gaia produced a sickle, a curved blade from thin air, and handed it to Kronos. She told him that she would call Uranus to her in the night, and that whilst the sky was preoccupied with her, Kronos must strike him with the sickle and cut him into pieces, before discarding them into the sea, injuring him enough so that he could never reform again. Kronos tried to protest. Although Uranus had upset Gaia, he was still Kronos' father, and patricide was an unforgivable crime, and the fates would surely strike him down for it. His protesting stopped when Gaia said that if he destroyed Uranus, she would give Kronos command of all Titans in the world. They would no longer be able to ridicule him or cast him to the side. The Titan of time agreed almost instantly, and Gaia smiled once again with a cruel smile. That night, Uranus visited Gaia at her request, as Kronos hid, crouched behind a large rock, clutching the sickle, contemplating whether or not he should murder his father in a bid for power. He didn't have time to do much thinking, because the minute he heard his mother shout, "Now!" Kronos leapt from behind the rock and swung the sickle in the direction of his father. He felt and heard it slice through him, and ichor, golden blood, spilled across the floor. As Uranus cried out in pain and fell to the floor, Kronos picked up what he had cut off his father. Unfortunately, that was his genitals. So he threw it far into the ocean. I want you to remember this for one of my later videos, as it is very significant for another myth. Kronos continued to hack away at his father, hearing the sky cry out in a mix of pain and the laughter of Gaia. When he was almost finished, Uranus uttered a curse at Kronos, saying that his children would also kill him in a more brutal fashion. With that, Kronos hacked the last part of his father away and threw all of the different pieces into different directions into the ocean. Later on, Gaia proclaimed Kronos king of the world. None of his siblings dared to speak out against him now, as they feared him. Kronos claimed Rhea for his wife, and that is how the rule of the First Order came to an end, and the reign of the Titans began. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to hit the like button. In my next video, I will be discussing the reign of the Titans and the Titanomachy. There will be less names involved in that myth, and I'm hoping you'll find it incredibly interesting. If you found this video informative and incredibly enjoyable, please do hit the subscribe button, and please leave comments about future videos you would like to see. Once again, I would love you all to support me in keeping classics alive. I will see you next time on the Mythology Manifest.